Discussion primarily we would want to discuss is basically beta blockers in hypertension to heart failure. Means now we have in between we have coronary artery disease also. So my aim in the next 35 minutes will be to discuss what is the role of beta blockers in hypertension. Initially there was a time when beta blockers were the first line agents. I think a decade back, people were using atenolol very frequently. Today also we find quite a few people using it. But then what evidence had to say, maybe you'll have to mind with me, there are going to be a few trials which probably I'll be trying to discuss. And at the end, if there are any queries, discussion, interaction, we'll probably take it. So I even invite Dr. Makle, who is probably in his cath lab dress, he's sitting and watching at this time. So So I'll have to keep myself more aware when he's there around. Okay. Chalo. So I think let's start. Okay. So now the cardiovascular continuum role of hypertension and coronary artery disease is that if somebody has risk factors of hypertension, dyslipidemia or diabetes, then develops atherosclerosis, LVH, coronary heart disease, ischemia, thrombosis, myocardial infarction, you have neurohormonal activation, then you can have arrhythmias, loss of muscle, and then few of them can have a sudden death, and few others who survive can have ventricular remodeling, ventricular enlargement. Then they come to you with heart failure, and refractory heart failure either can die because of pump failure or because of ventricular arrhythmia and death. So this is what is our cardiovascular continuum of hypertension, CAD, arrhythmias, heart failure all put together. Now classification of blood pressure, as you all know, I don't have to tell you, it is optimum is below 120/80. 120 to 129. I think this is the previous classification. I think so. Okay. Sorry. So this is not the thing. But as of now, for us, anybody between 120 to 139 is obviously considered to be pre-hypertensive. And 139 or 140 and above is hypertension. In systolic and diastolic, anything above 90 is going to be hypertension, which is there. Now, the important part, why is it relevant? Because today's era, as compared to a decade back, Indian data tells you that globally, overall prevalence above 25 years was around 40%. Worldwide hypertension is estimated to have 7.5 million deaths, and almost 12.8% of the total deaths are hypertension mediated, which is a very large number. Now, coming to beta blockers in hypertension, resolving the controversies, I'll probably discuss that. Now, important clinical point is that underlying mechanism of hypertension differs between the young and the old. Young hypertensives have systolic BP more than 140, but diastolic is also above more than 90, whereas elderly patient diastolic is below 90 and systolic is above 140. Definitely saying that this is more of a wide pulse pressure, or we call it as isolated systolic hypertension. Now, diastolic hypertension, generally young age, male sex, high BMI, high peripheral vascular resistance, and increased weight during follow-up, means obesity and metabolic syndrome is also a fact. But when we talk of isolated systolic hypertension, older females, increased BMI during follow-up, but weaker than in the young. And ISH arises more commonly from normal and high normal blood pressure. Now, if we talk about the main mechanism in young hypertensive, that is below 60 years, is increased peripheral vascular resistance. And main mechanism here is aging and the non-compliant or the stiff arteries that we are talking. In this mechanism also, you should add renin-angiotensin system activation. So that itself is also responsible for your pressure being high. Another thing is younger patients generally have got a very high basal adrenergic drive, which is high. And many young people with hypertension can have sinus tachycardia at baseline. This could be because of lack of physical activity, obesity, metabolic syndrome, and secondly could be because of tachycardia as a mechanism of the hypertension which is there. We all know the mechanisms by all of these drugs act. ACE, ARB act on the renin-angiotensin, calcium channel on the smooth muscle cells. Diuretics obviously predominantly act on excretion of salt and water, whereas beta blockers reduce heart rate by blocking predominantly beta 1 receptors and reducing the cardiac output. At the same time, you can also have renin release and sympathetic activity also can get affected in selective beta blockers when we are talking about. Now coming to the paper, this was probably in 2005. Should beta blocker remain first choice in the treatment of primary hypertension? Those who remember JNC7, it was a landmark in 2004 when they had published telling that beta blockers are not to be used as the first line agent. ALLHAT trial was also published at the same time. And when we look at this Lancet paper, here also it said the same thing. The effect of beta blocker is less than optimum with a raised risk of stroke. And between 2004 and 2006, there was a big bashing with atenolol took, primarily because of the fact that atenolol caused significant amount of stroke which was there. And when they started analyzing, we realized that there is something called as the central aortic pressure and the peripheral pressure. Beta blockers, by producing bradycardia, because of the peripheral return wave meets the antegrade wave at the central vessels. And that is the reason why, even though blood pressure is well controlled, but events are more higher in the atenolol group. And that is the primary reason people stopped, or there was a lot of criticism about atenolol to be used as an antihypertensive drug. Now what the trial showed is that 1998 meta-analysis showed that may not be as effective as diuretics. Live study in 2002 was losartan versus atenolol, where there was a big difference. Losartan showed significant impact. ASCOT BPLA was a 2-arm trial where A plus C, perindopril with calcium channel blocker and beta blocker plus a diuretic were compared. And here also the same thing, that stroke, cardiovascular events and fewer deaths were there in the combination of amlodipine plus perindopril group. And the Cochrane review in 2007 definitely found beta blockers to be inferior to all other drugs, particularly in the ability to lower the risk of stroke. So I think all of them had the common parameters, and that's the reason why atenolol was generally not the drug as the first drug of choice to be used in people who have essential hypertension. In the recent guidelines, the role of beta blockers as a primary tool to treat hypertension has also come under question. So today, if we talk in 2020, it still remains the fourth line agent, ACE inhibitor or ARB, or a calcium channel blocker, depending on which drug you want to start initially. Thiazide type diuretics like chlorthalidone, indapamide, and hydrochlorothiazide remain the third line agents. And the last agent remains to be beta blockers. Now the problems, remember why the results were so disappointing was primarily problems with atenolol. So it was said that most of the trials discussed use atenolol. In most of the trial, aten was used as a once daily dose. As you all know, the half-life is just 6 to 9 hours and it doesn't protect the brain as well as the heart during the other 15 or 16 hours. Atenolol taken once daily leaves the patient unprotected during the last 6 hours. And it is possible that this may have contributed to the results in clinical trials that use atenolol to treat hypertension. Metabolic side effects also were more with atenolol, particularly hyperuricemia, hypertriglyceridemia, and lipid abnormalities, and also sugar control probably, or new onset diabetes when they are taking beta blockers which are there. Now the problem is that why were the results so? The second part is difference between younger and older patient. This has been a very, very interesting meta-analysis which was published in 2009, telling that if you classify people below 60 years of age and younger than 60 and older than 60, all the trial meta-analysis tells you that in younger than 60, your odds ratio is 0.97, which means no harm significantly done. And when you talk of elderly people who are above 60 years of age, it was 1.06, suggesting that definitely there is more harm, which came to a conclusion that, and this meta-analysis composed of death, stroke, and myocardial infarction, and comparing beta blockers versus other antihypertensive drugs. So at least this gives you a classification that if you use it in younger population, the harm done by the drug is not that much. Secondly, it was atenolol, which was an older generation beta blocker. And thirdly, using it in very elderly should generally be avoided. So beta blockers are as good as other classes in younger, but not in older patients. But now we have to differentiate two varieties of hypertension. One is an uncomplicated hypertension and one is a complicated hypertension. So what do you mean by uncomplicated? Means does not have any other comorbidities and no other complications, and complicated means there are associated comorbidities and patient has coronary artery disease, congestive heart failure, arrhythmias. So as we all know, beta blockers are used as compelling indications in people who have heart failure, MI, post myocardial infarction, LV dysfunction, to reduce sudden cardiac death. And that those and people having arrhythmias, ventricular arrhythmias, either maybe post MI or maybe post LV dysfunction in the long run. And so this means that beta blockers are increasingly recommended as the CV sequelae increase. So this we already know, but when it comes to uncomplicated hypertension, beta blockers definitely should not be 0%, but we need to look at which indications we can probably take these drugs. And here, if you see 2018 guidelines, ACE plus ARB plus CCB plus diuretic, and in resistant hypertension, we had spironolactone. Still, if you see, beta blocker doesn't come into vogue, but what they have written it as, consider beta blockers at any treatment step when there is a specific indication like post-MI angina, heart failure, atrial fibrillation, and younger person which is there. But these are all complicated situations. So now potential benefits of beta blockers. Why do you get the benefits? Is number one is anti-atherogenic, anti-arrhythmic because of sympathetic and activity reduction and heart rate reduction, anti-ischemic because of decrease of heart rate and blood pressure, and reverses the cardiac remodeling. So the underlying mechanism, so important clinical points, what we take home messages are that there are differences of hypertension between young and old. Definition of young below 60 and old means above 60 years of age. Beta blockers are as good as other classes in younger patients, provided you use a cardio-selective beta blocker, which is once a day and it is a longer acting drug, and use it in younger people who have significant signs of increased sympathetic activity, which probably is because of sinus tachycardia at baseline. And beta blockers can be used at any step when there is specific indications, and they are effective in reducing the sympathetic overdrive. Coming to Indian perspectives, if you see in India, the prevalence is almost 30%. 1/3 of the people are having hypertension by the Great India BP study, which was by the All India Institute. Dr. Ramakrishnan was the chief author for this in 2019. And there was another study, Indian Heart Study, in the Indian population comparing office blood pressure to ambulatory, that means at home blood pressure, which is going to be used. And that was published in Journal of Hypertension 2020, and Upendra Kaul sir was the primary author for this particular thing. So again, they said that mean age was less than 45 years and mean heart rate was above 80. So in our population, you see a lot of people who have sinus tachycardia at baseline, and they're relatively younger people. So the fear that of using beta blockers in young people that we have, one is bradycardia, which is not a challenge because most of our heart rates are higher. Secondly, the negative parameters of dyslipidemia as well as the uric acid in the newer beta blockers, that is decreased. And thirdly, the impotence and the hallucinations that people say, again with a smaller or a moderate dosages, the incidence is very, very less in such subset of patients. An elevated heart rate increases the risk of mortality. We already know that if the heart rate is above 100, the odds ratio is almost three times more. And somebody whose heart rate is 60 to 80 is almost 1.4 to 1.5 of stroke, cardiovascular disease, and all causes. And when you have 80 to 100, is exactly so linear correlation between increased heart rate and mortality, that is CAD and stroke, which is there. Resistant hypertension in clinic practice in India, what does it tell you? That 1 in 5 patients have resistance. Almost 20% of the people in our population will be resistant hypertension. Means most of our people will require more than 2 or 3 drugs. And why, when we are talking about the drugs, why beta 1 selectivity is important in the treatment of hypertension associated sympathetic overdrive is because when you talk of beta 1 receptors, it increases contractility in heart rate and increases myocardial necrosis and apoptosis, and it also increases renin release. And beta 1 blockers reduce the sympathetic activity in heart and kidney, preserves the beta 2 mediated vasodilatation, and reduce the risk or due to adverse effect because of beta 2 receptors in the lung and peripheral. That is one of the reasons where you have a non-specific beta blocker where beta 1 plus beta 2 both are blocked. They can have bronchospasm and sometimes vasoconstriction also. which are the protective benefits of a beta 2 receptor. Thereby, atenolol is one of the drugs that should not be used in people with plain hypertension, and using a beta 1 specific drug will definitely mitigate those differences. Coming to classification of beta blockers, beta 1 selectivity, if you see atenolol and metoprolol, which are there, with intrinsic sympathetic myoactivity is nebivolol, which is there, and hydrophilia is almost atenolol, which we are talking. But when it comes to our drug which is there, non-selective beta blocker is carvedilol and labetalol, beta 1 blocker which is there, and selective beta blocker you have atenolol, metoprolol and bisoprolol which are there. But the selectivity depends on the amount of receptor uptake. So here it means 2018 guidelines tell you management of arterial hypertension, recommended treatment of resistance, addition of low dose spironolactone to existing treatment, or addition of further diuretic therapy if intolerant to spironolactone with either eplerenone amiloride, higher dose thiazide or diuretic, or the addition of bisoprolol or doxazocin. That means the fourth line agent that you want to use in 2018 guidelines, they probably make use of bisoprolol, which is there. Now here the important highlighting point said, under this we have already discussed, Indian patients are younger, have high sympathetic overdrive, prevalence of resistant hypertension is 20%, and bisoprolol is an additional drug recommended for the treatment of hypertension resistant if they are not controlled with ACE-ARB with a calcium channel blocker. Now beta blockers and adverse effect profiles, when you say bisoprolol has minimal effect on the airway management. So on an average, if atenolol causes so much of change in the airway resistance, bisoprolol at 10 milligrams and 20 milligrams when it was studied, hardly any impact at 10 milligrams in patients. So thereby, if there is no active bronchospasm, this drug definitely can be used in patients of COPD and bronchial asthma too. Lipid metabolism, it is lipid safe. And if you see very clearly, bisoprolol change in the HDL value hardly above changes which are there, whereas atenolol definitely significantly decreases the HDL which is there over a period of almost 3 years. Secondly, bisoprolol has minimal effect on maybe libido that we were talking about. Carvedilol being non-selective has got almost 13.5%. Propranolol and etalon is 5 and 3%. Whereas bisoprolol being highly beta 1 selective is very, very negligible in clinical practice. So in summary, sympathetic overdrive leads to elevated heart rate and development of multiple cardiovascular risk factors. Beta blockers have to prevent this by blocking the sympathetic overdrive. Indian patients specifically have increased heart rate, thereby beta blocker can be the second or the third line agent, even though if the person is younger than 60 years. You need a beta 1 specific beta blocker, and amongst them, bisoprolol is highly selective. Its selectivity of beta 1 is the highest amongst all the other drugs as compared to metoprolol and other drugs. It has got a very long acting drug which is almost close to 24 hours. And definitely it is also used in people who also have maybe asthma, COPD, but they do not have active bronchospasm. So they also have a better safety profile, which is an important parameter for selecting this molecule. Now going from hypertension to CAD and heart failure, which is there. Now this already we have discussed. Now when we say obviously how do beta blocker decrease, we already know about it. And when we talk of beta blockers to reduce ischemia and microvascular angina, obviously beta blockers and or calcium channel blockers are used to control heart rate and syndrome. It's a class 1A recommendation. And treatment of microvascular angina, as you all know, there are many middle-aged female between 25 to 45 years who have chest pain, which may be typical like angina. They do a stress test. Stress test is positive, but when you do coronary angiogram in them, mostly your epicardial coronary arteries are normal. And once you have epicardial normal, we suspect that there is probably something at the resistance vessels. And giving drugs like beta blocker are the first line agent. It's a 1B recommendation. Control of heart rate automatically, at the same time vasodilatation will also improve the microvascular angina in these group of patients. Coming to beta blockers should be prescribed as initial therapy for relief of simple and stable ischemic heart disease. Class 1B recommendation. It should be started and continued for 3 years in all patients with normal LV function after MI and ACE is again class 1B. Coming to drugs which are used in MI and LV and LV systolic dysfunction and post MI with heart failure or prior MI, class 1A recommendation. And let me tell you here, only 3 drugs are used. Number 1 is metoprolol succinate, second is carvedilol, third is bisoprolol. These are the only 3 drugs approved in this particular indication. Beta blockers may be considered as chronic therapy for all the other patients with chronic vascular disease, class 2B, level of evidence C. So when we are talking of ischemic heart as well as heart failure, there is great amount of role for beta blockers, and we are underutilizing beta blockers primarily because of number 1, hypertension, number 2, bradycardia, number 3, bronchospasm, or people can have comorbidities. So now we have a drug which is definitely useful in all these situations. Coming to recommendations for hypertension treatment in patients with symptomatic angina, beta blockers and or calcium channel blockers are definitely recommended according to the ESC 2019 guidelines. And systematic study after MI or a suspected it reduces the death in acute MI. So beta blockers without intrinsic sympathomimetic activity, percentage reduction in mortality is almost 27 to 31%. And with intrinsic sympathomimetic activity is almost 18%. So this is coming from the data where bisoprolol had 3 trials which were there, the CBIS-1, CBIS-2 and the CBIS-3 trial. So CBIS-1 trial was the one which was used. It was published in 1994, sorry. And that trial showed the benefit of bisoprolol used in MI and LV dysfunction with a 32 or a 33% reduction in the mortality. CBIS-2 trial was published in 1999. The intent of CBIS-2 was particularly those specific benefits to be given when you use bisoprolol. If you remember the metoprolol data as well as the ramipril data with HOPE trial, the maximum benefit was noted when the person is on trial dosage, that is 10 milligram of ramipril or 200 milligrams of metoprolol succinate. But CBIS-2 clarified that 1.25 is the lowest dose of bisoprolol. If you start escalating to 2.5, 5 and 10 milligrams, the benefit enhances almost proportionately. But even at 1.25 milligram dose, there is 20 to 22% relative risk reduction of mortality. With 2.5 to 5 milligram, it is almost 25%. If you are able to touch 10 milligram dosage, that also gives you a 27 or 28% risk reduction, which is there. So that is very, very important that this drug, and the CBIS-3 trial was a landmark trial to compare whether ACE inhibitor or a beta blocker first should be used in patients with MI and LV dysfunction. And this trial showed that if I use bisoprolol before using ACE inhibitors in post MI, at the end of 2 years, the mortality was definitely better as compared to using ACE inhibitor first and beta blockers little later. And coming to beta blocker use in stable CAD, according to the geographical regions, if you see, except our country, if you see all the other places, the bisoprolol usage is definitely very high in Russia, Ukraine, Canada, Middle East, Europe, Asia also. And Central and South America, obviously metoprolol as well as succinate and tartrate both are high. But in India, our metoprolol benefit is usage is very, very high. Probably, yes, the number of brands which are available in metoprolol very high. With bisoprolol, there are very, very few companies who are able to do that. But this drug, one thing I can definitely tell you that the amount of blood pressure reduction as well as the efficacy as well as the compliance, all these things are very, very comfortable with this particular drug. Coming to long-term effectiveness of bisoprolol in angina, this was a real-world study. And what does it do is that this is the largest study to date investigating the effect of bisoprolol on mortality and cardiovascular outcomes in CAD in the real-world scenario. And definitely up to 15 years, bisoprolol has a 55% lower risk of mortality compared to other beta blockers. Here, there were almost 17 beta blockers which were studied amongst that, and that too over a period of 15 years. And probably bisoprolol fared the best in this group which was there. So coming to this particular point, highlighting the summarizing all these things is sympathetic overdrive leads to heart rate and development of multiple CV risk factors. sympathetic overdrive and elevated heart rate increases the risk of cardiovascular and all-cause mortality in patients of all ages. Beta blockers help to prevent the adverse effect of sympathetic overdrive and reduces the risk of recurrent cardiovascular events and death in patients with CHD. And beta blockers are recommended in the treatment guidelines as first line for angina relief, first line for patients with microvascular angina. Coming to heart failure, which we already have discussed, but you need to understand that somebody who has heart failure ejection fraction, which is less than 40%, are called HFrEF. Anybody between 40 to 49 is mid-range ejection fraction, and preserved EF is basically above or equal to 50%. An etiology of heart failure, I'll not go into it. We know heart failure can cause complications. The guidelines when we talk about, which I already discussed, that routine oral beta blockers should be considered during hospital stay and continued thereafter in all patients. It's a class 2A recommendation, and only 3 of these agents that I discussed with you are to be used. And here it is guidelines for AMI present with the ST elevation MI. So if ST elevation MI is there and LV dysfunction is there, beta blocker, unless there is no contraindication, can be used early. Coming to 2014 non-ST elevation MI guidelines, sustained release metoprolol, succinate, carvedilol, or bisoprolol are the recommended for beta blocker therapy with concomitant NST ACS, stabilized heart failure and reduced LV systolic function. So this is what is also very, very important. So benefits of beta blockers we've already decreased. It decreases the infarction and the arrhythmias and improves long-term survival. And this data tells you time-dependent therapies of MI heart failure. And if you see at 0 hours, 24 hours, and at discharge, the earlier you start beta blockers, the longer is going to be the benefit and the survival in this group of these patients. And obviously, if somebody has frank signs, symptoms of heart failure, do not use beta blockers in those situations. Let the heart failure fluid overload status become better, and that's when you can probably use it. Coming to symptomatic heart failure, we already know that you need to add beta blockers here along with ACE inhibitors. You should always up titrate to maximum tolerated doses. The up titration should occur every 4 weekly. And if you are using 1.25 milligrams, you can make it 2.5, and then you can make it 5 and 10 milligrams of bisoprolol that you are using. And drugs that reduce mortality, the only challenge now is that there are many patients who deserve to get a beta blocker, but probably because of maybe a mindset block or worry about side effects. Let me tell you, as compared to ACE inhibitor, beta blocker mortality benefit is very good. And all the 3 beta blockers have got a 30 or a 35% relative risk reduction if you use these drugs appropriately in the candidates who really deserve to use it in HFrEF patients. So again, the conclusion is all guidelines recommend use of beta blockers in HFrEF and post-MI LV dysfunction. They provide maximum mortality benefit in patients with HFrEF. Coming to selection of beta blockers, which is there, we'll discuss a little bit on that. So heart failure guidelines, as I told you, there are 3 drugs. Nebivolol was also written in 2016 guidelines, but you need to understand that indicates that treatment not shown to reduce CV or all-cause mortality in patients with heart failure, or was shown to be non-inferior to a treatment that does. This was basically the seniors trial where nebivolol was used, but it definitely did not show great benefit, and thereby these are the only 3 drugs that you need to use. Let me tell you, metoprolol tartrate is a short-acting beta blocker that can only be used in IPD, but when it is metoprolol succinate, it is a longer-acting drug. Carvedilol already you can have as a controlled release or a plain carvedilol from starting from 6.25 to 25 milligrams, and bisoprolol is available from 1.25 to 10 milligrams strengths, which is there. An effect of beta blockers on mortality in large placebo-controlled trials, if you see bisoprolol 34, 34 and 35%. So let me tell you, all the 3 drugs which are there, 34% relative risk reduction is absolutely brilliant. 1/3 deaths you can reduce by only using a beta blocker is also very, very important. And comorbidities in chronic conditions, at least you have 3 to 4 comorbidities which are there, which probably needs to look at, and you need to manage those patients. So in heart failure, only 2.5% had no comorbidity. So that is the reason you need to look at somebody is diabetic, somebody is smoker, somebody has COPD, somebody has renal failure. So you need to look at all those things which are there. So some comorbid with selection or efficacy plays an important role are if patient has atrial fibrillation, diabetes, COPD and CKD is what we need to understand. Up to 35% of people can have AF and CHF. 44% of patients who are hospitalized can have CHF and diabetes. COPD ranges in 10 to 40%, and CKD is present in almost 20 to 70% of these patients. Now coming to some little data that we have, comparative effects of carvedilol versus bisoprolol for severe congestive heart failure, special reference to AF. So survival of patients with AF in 2 treatment groups is almost similar, but cardiac event-free patients with AF in 2 treatment groups, definitely bisoprolol fared better at the end of almost 600 days or almost 1.5 to 2 years when we are talking about. And in this group, when you say survival of patients with AF, it was similar, but cardiac event-free. So definitely telling you that bisoprolol has little edge as compared to when a person has atrial fibrillation and has a heart failure, probably bisoprolol may fare little better as compared to others. Increasing bisoprolol dose was associated with lower mortality in patients with diabetes. So if you see, bisoprolol was 8.9% per mg per day if they had diabetes, and 3.5% per mg per day if they had no diabetes. So 5-year mortality, depending on the dose of beta blockers, tells you that the number of patients remaining in each group after each follow-up was definitely higher if you see. So bisoprolol was, when it is none, mortality is highest. If you reach more than 7.5 milligram, definitely mortality. But let me tell you, less than 2.5 or 2.5 to 7.5, even if you're able to use a lower dose in a diabetic patient, the mortality benefit between this, which is 70%, and this, which is 55%, you have a relative risk reduction of 15% if you are at 2.5 milligrams or even 1.25 milligram. So this was the main aim of the CBIS-2 trial, which probably showed this. In the non-diabetic group, still if you're using a lower dose, the benefit was better than not using anything in a non-diabetic. So thereby, using some dose which is tolerable to the patient, you should give them for maximum benefit for mortality benefit. Now, beta blocker use in patients with COPD and chronic heart failure, as we had already discussed, a nationwide study in Denmark showed that use of carvedilol and CHF plus COPD had an increased risk of heart failure hospitalization compared to that of all these 3 drugs, specifically because carvedilol is a non-selective beta blocker, and non-selectivity wise, it obviously blocks the alpha as well as the beta 2 receptors, and that would cause more of bronchoconstriction and bronchospasm. In another study, only high dose bisoprolol showed the significant difference in all-cause mortality in CHF and COPD compared to metoprolol and carvedilol. And choosing amongst the beta blocker in heart failure according to the beta receptor location and functions of the cardiopulmonary system, this data tells you that although different types of beta blockers are currently approved, possible criteria to choose the best beta blocking agent according to HF characteristic and to beta receptor location are still lacking. In such a context, this literature tells you very clearly that beta 1 selective versus beta 1 beta 2 with respect to alveolo-capillary gas diffusion and chemoreceptor response in heart failure patients, both factors able to impact on quality of life and most likely prognosis. And flowchart of optimized beta blocker treatment is you do a DLCO in these patients. And if DLCO is less than 80, you can use a bisoprolol, nebivolol, or a questionable metoprolol. But if your DLCO is more than 80%, then you decide whether the age is below 75 or above 75. Below 75, definitely all these 3 drugs can be favored. And if the DLCO is more than 80, and here the person has frequent heart failure episodes and exposure to hypoxia, high altitude or respiratory comorbidities, definitely bisoprolol is the only drug that should be used. So there are many elderly people who have COPD with heart failure, and if they have already frequent heart failure episodes, this drug is the drug of choice, number 1. And in elderly patients above 75 years, nebivolol is preferred as compared to the others. And if they are less than 75, you see the VE upon the VCO2 And accordingly, you can take a call if VE upon VCO2 is more than 34, carvedilol is used, and VE upon VCO2 less than 34, any of the three agents can be used. Suggesting that when you want patients, because mostly we are always more worried about bronchospasm, worsening of heart failure because of the beta blockers. And if even despite not doing this, if person is less than 75 years old and patient has a COPD, definitely the drug of choice should be bisoprolol in those group of patients. And carvedilol versus metoprolol and maintenance, which is there, maintenance hemodialysis when we talk about, the predictor, what they said is all-cause mortality, carvedilol was 1.08, CV was 1.18, and intradialytic hypotension was 1.1, odds ratio when we talk of. And when it comes to metoprolol, it was like initiation of treatment with carvedilol or metoprolol and 5-year study, which they wanted to check. And what does this tell you? That relative to metoprolol initiation, carvedilol initiation was associated with a higher 1-year all-cause cardiovascular mortality. So that's why in CKD patients, if at all you want to use, metoprolol is the drug that you can use. And even in low doses, bisoprolol also can be preferred, which is there. And one potential mechanism may be increased occurrence of intradialytic hypotension after carvedilol versus metoprolol initiation, which is there. And beta blocker dialyzability and mortality in older people. Some beta blockers are efficiently removed from the circulation by, they are called as high dialyzability, and whereas others are not. So high dialyzability means atenolol, esbitalol or metoprolol, and low dialyzability include patient initiating bisoprolol or propranolol. So they wanted to decide that which beta blockers are removed effectively. And what they said is all-cause mortality was 1.41 in the high dialyzable group, and low dialyzable, this was the relative risk. This was 1.0, and this was statistically significant. So low dialyzability group included patients with bisoprolol or propranolol, which is there. So thereby, in people who have CKD, they are on hemodialysis. You have a choice between metoprolol versus bisoprolol, and in those groups also, definitely the low dialyzable beta blockers are little better than the high dialyzable beta blocker, suggesting that the study found that patients with long-term HD, the risk of death was significantly higher among those prescribed the high dialyzable beta blocker than those prescribed low dialyzable beta blockers. So in summary, to end, all guidelines recommend the use of beta blockers in post-MI, LV dysfunction and HFrEF. In this, there is no argument, and it has to be one of these three agents, carvedilol, metoprolol, succinate or bisoprolol. Beta blockers provide the maximum mortality reduction in patients with HFrEF. As we all know, 30 to 35% relative risk reduction. More than 97% of CHF have associated comorbidities. Amongst comorbidities, if the patient has AF or COPD, definitely bisoprolol is favored. Somebody is on a hemodialysis, bisoprolol preferred over metoprolol. And we need to understand that in diabetic patients, CKD, COPD, AF, definitely when you use this, you have a great advantage of bisoprolol versus the other two beta blockers. Thank you very much for a patient hearing. And if there are any suggestions or discussions, I think we'll take them now.
Yes, sir. In the chat, there is a 2 questions.
Yeah.
So beta blocker in psoriasis.
Psoriasis.
Psoriasis. Yeah.
Beta blockers in psoriasis, probably I have not found any specific. This only thing is that one thing that we need to understand is bisoprolol versus metoprolol. Your excretion is by CYP2 C6 pathway probably. So if probably that drug, the other drug in anti-psoriatic drugs, they are asking to, they are going to the cytochrome P450, then probably we'll have to have a drug-drug interaction. Maybe you'll have to reduce the dose to 50%. But as such, I have not read anywhere that you have a contraindication of maybe beta blocker or bisoprolol to psoriasis at least. I'm not aware about that.
So can we take one comment from Makle sir also is there?
Yes, please, 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 please.
Yeah, psoriasis per se, I have got no experience or explanation. But I don't think so there is any reason why not to use the beta blockers there. Because psoriasis is basically the autoimmune disease and a lot of psychological pathways also.
Correct, correct.
Part of psychosomatic disorder. Where the beta blocker will definitely help to control the rate as well as
yeah, it will take care of both.
Mental quietness. Point number 2, you have very well covered both beta bisoprolol in a hypertension as well as heart failure. One small comment: the hypertension definition keeps on changing a lot.
Yes, sir.
Every society has got different levels and all those things. So finally, we come down to the magic figure of 140 by 90
Correct.
is the where we want to get it down. You already alluded to the India Heart Study. Yes, the role of ABPM, etc., which you have already covered. Your all both summary slides were really good, particularly the heart failure, where you have covered that it can be safely used in a diabetic patient, how it is more useful in the patients with a CKD because of the dialysable. So I think the overall message is good. Another thing is the dose requirement is also low, and bisoprolol is more active. Actually, bisoprolol got more sort of promoted after the CBIS one,
Yes.
and particularly it was more beneficial in the black population as compared to the Caucasians.
Correct.
And whatever said and done, forget about my color on the screen, but we are not Caucasians.
Very true.
So it is, and another thing is the basic Indian patients, because of the psychological stress and other stress, the intrinsic heart rate is always
Higher.
more, is higher. You know, they are more sympathetically overdriven. So this drug is definitely helpful, both in heart failure as well as hypertension.
Correct.
Sir, अजून एक question आहे. So what about chlorothalidone is better than other loop diuretics?
See, chlorothalidone came into the picture after the JNC8. In fact, the JNC8 results were delayed for almost more than a year because they are waiting for the chlorothalidone results, and after that, the chlorothalidone and indapamide both are found to be useful. But there also it is a rider that dose requirement is small,
Correct.
either 6.25 or 12.5, not more than the 25 milligram had the same mortality. So dose requirement is definitely low. Rajesh, you can add something more to this?
Yeah. So I think what sir is mentioning is correct, that JNC8 was initially called JNC late because it came very late after almost a year. And that was the same because of the data of the chlorothalidone. And what sir mentions very clearly, why chlorothalidone made resurgence, but because 6.25 milligram came for the first time in maybe after that trial. And so never use chlorothalidone above 12.5 dosage. So correct me if we are right. Probably one of the companies has got a 25 milligram of
Yeah, they had.
chlorothalidone with a 40 milligram of azilsartan, which is there.
It went into disrepute.
Yeah, that was another challenge. So please don't use 25 milligram of chlorothalidone. 6.25, very good, and 12.5, absolutely don't go above that. Otherwise, hypokalemia and other electrolyte imbalance is very an issue with that drug.
So one question from Dr. Prithviraj Chauhan sir. He has raised the hand. So sir, you can ask the question. Dr. Prithviraj Chauhan sir.
Yes sir. बोला डॉक्टर चव्हाण.
सर चॅट बॉक्स मध्ये लिहिलाय सर तुमचा प्रश्न.
एक मिनिट हा जरा एक सेकंड मी जरा कुठे आहे.
सर दोन क्वेश्चन होते, दोघी घेतले सर.
अच्छा झालेत का? आय थिंक इथे मला दिसत नाहीये, बट टाइप मेसेज येतोय.
सो नाही, दोनच क्वेश्चन
इंडिव्हिज्युअलला दिलाय सर तुम्हाला.
इंडिव्हिज्युअलला आलाय सर तुम्हाला.
इंडिव्हिज्युअलला यू हॅव अ इंडिव्हिज्युअल चॅट बॉक्स हियर.
सर एक मिनिट मी बघ.
प्राइवेटली चैट बॉक्स होगा तो देख. हाँ उन्होंने दिया है. यस.
Otherwise you can shoot a question.
या डॉक्टर चव्हाण तुम्ही बोलू शकता ज्यापर्यंत मी.
सर शुड वी स्टॉप बीटा ब्लॉकर्स आफ्टर द एज ऑफ 60 years?
No, now the point is that if somebody is tolerating beta blockers and if he's taking atenolol, please change that. But I think it's a big challenge many a times because beyond 60, you're going to have associated comorbidities, coronary artery disease, diabetes. And let me tell you, we are not doing so much of central aortic pressures because the issue is that I don't know the impact. If my central aortic blood pressure, even if I check by a machine, and if it tells me which is high, I still do not know what risk of stroke I have got. So that is the reason we are not using that in clinical practice. But if somebody is on atenolol, see to it that you either change the drug to a little cardioselective one. And if somebody has got an MI or he undergoes coronary angioplasty, definitely one of these three drugs like bisoprolol, metoprolol, or a carvedilol. But out of this, bisoprolol and these two other drugs that you can use. So you don't have to stop beta blocker, but and plus monitor his heart rate. If somebody is elderly and his heart rate is remaining below 60, many a times because of chronotropic incompetence, somebody will come to you with breathlessness. And when you monitor the pulse rate, it will be around 50. Yeah, Dr. Makle, you can.
See, many times over the 60, these patients for prostate or some other reason, they are taking, or bladder neck obstruction, they are taking the alpha blockers. And which we many times don't know, because nowadays the practice has become like compartmentalized, and if the patient has been prescribed by the urologist prazosin, etc., which has got a beneficial effect on the hypertension, but if and then these patients land with the postural hypertension. So if he is taking the beta blocker along with prazosin, can lead to the postural hypertension. Second thing, as you already said, as the age advances, the heart rate also decreases. If you find the chronotropic incompetence is there, you can definitely withdraw or change over to other drugs.
Correct.
And should the dose be tapered if at all you have to stop beta blocker? Or you can stop abruptly?
No, see, this holds true only in the patients with the chronic stable angina or those who have angina which are not covered, because beta blocker withdrawal angina is a known. If you are thinking of just a hypertension alone, standalone, you can stop it.
Yeah, so you take a call depending on the heart rate, other comorbidities, what is the need, how important is your beta blocker. But at least one thing very clear, do not use atenolol beyond 60 years of age. That is very clear. And any of the other drugs, and as we discussed, you can individualize your treatment according to this.
So one more question from Dr. Ajit sir. He has raised the hand, sir. You can unmute,
please.
sir.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Ajit.
Okay, his question is, I've seen the cardiologist's prescription in a post-MI. There is no beta blocker. Why? Is that the correct question?
Oh, yes, sir. Correct. I have seen the cardiology prescription in my post-MI. In post-MI patient, there is no beta blocker therapy.
Okay. Rajesh, do you want to answer or shall I go ahead?
Go ahead, sir. You start.
Okay. See, one of the reasons, first thing is your current prescriptions of the post-intervention or post-bypass or post-ischemic heart disease should include the beta blocker. There is no question about it, because it has definitely got advantages. But if he has not given, that means the patient must have been in a borderline failure or low ejection fraction, that is the reason, or heart rate is too low, particularly the elderly patient. So that may be the reason why he has not added.
Correct. So another thing is, yes, what sir is trying to mention is any relative or an absolute contraindication of a beta blocker. Somebody has fluid overload, you're on a diuretic when the patient is discharged, generally beta blockers, none of us start at that particular moment. Even though a person has tachycardia, you would use ivabradine rather than beta blocker. Second is again COPD or any other contraindication for a beta blocker. Heart rate is low, inferior wall MI with a complete heart block where you've done an angioplasty to the right coronary artery. Those are situations where probably beta blocker might not be used initially. But if you see a patient over a period, it should be the cardiologist's responsibility that over a period of maybe 6 weeks, once the patient is off diuretics, ejection fraction is below 40%, I'm sorry. And then this person you are in, and blood pressure is definitely above 110 systolic. Those patients definitely you can, or you should start them on a beta blocker. Any of these three, as we had discussed, according to your choice and this particular thing. And maybe, yes, that is going to reduce, because I think the main challenge which we are facing today is mortality reduction. The numbers that are being shown, we still are not, in our country itself, also not reaching those numbers, purely because of the inhibition, worry of side effects and all those things.
Any other questions from any doctors? They can unmute themselves and ask the question. We're having 2 more minutes.
So shall we take it granted that we are done?
Almost. Yeah.
Rajesh, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for attending.
I just because you are the speaker and you are the authority on this. So I thought,
sir. Thanks. I'm obliged.
Really, thank you, sir.
Pleasure and honor to be here and honor to participate and answer the questions. Without saying sort of, I was like you can say moderator or chairperson.
No,
Thank
sir,
you,
you
sir.
are always there. Don't worry about that. But it was great to have interaction. At least when somebody is asking, you probably enjoy doing that.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Can
Thank
I
you.
leave the meeting?
Yes, sir. Yes, sure.
Sachin?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining. It's really a pleasure